out the motherfucking pack.
Right out
But
the
niggas don't know
pass.
how to act.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to yet another football video. Today, we are taking a look at the NFL free agency and what I think is going to happen with all the quarterbacks in question, really. Whether it's the draft or the free agent guys who I think are going to be moving teams. Let's get it right into it, man. Let's take a look at some of these guys. First off, we're going to take a look at every team where I think, we're just going to take a look at every team and discuss which ones I think there could be a bit of a QB controversy going on. Starting from the top left and moving down. I don't think any NFC West team is going to make a change at quarterback. My Seahawks, the story came out. They recently told Gino he will be the guy in 2024. Niners, obviously, no reason to move on. Cardinals, Kyler just got back. Rams, uh, even though Stafford's getting up there in age, he just had a great year. No reason to move on from him. Lions, if you would have asked me last year, I actually would have thought, or I would have said, there might be a chance the Lions in the year are looking to move off of Goff, transition to Hendon Hooker. I think that might still be in their plans in the future, but Jared Goff just had back-to-back very good years, so no reason to move off of him. Vikings, see that O next to their name, that means they, well, it says a new quarterback is incoming, but they need to make a decision at quarterback, really is what that means. But the F, meaning that I think that position is filled, meaning that I do think that I think Kirk is the main option for the Vikings. Whether that means Kirk is looking to return to the Vikings more so than leaving somewhere else, that's up in the air. I'm not sure about that, but I think from the Vikings perspective, they're looking to bring back Kirk. Packers obviously sticking with Jordan Love, and the Bears, I put an X next to them because I think they should just stick with Justin Fields. However, we're going to get into, it's probably likely that they may transition. Falcons, obviously, Desmond Ritter's ass. Gotta move on from that. How do you do so? Well, I think obviously since they don't have an option in house, you're going to need to draft a guy, possibly. I think this would be the best option for them, or go and get a guy in free agency. Panthers, obviously, sticking with Bryce Young. Saints, you could make an argument, I guess, that Derek Carr was not good enough, but they signed him to a 4-year massive contract. And honestly, he was getting too much hate for the amount of injuries he had to deal with, suspension from Alvin Kamara, horrible offensive coordinator. I honestly didn't think Derek Carr did too bad. I think he is certainly going to be the Saints quarterback next season. Buccaneers, technically Baker is a free agent, so that position is open, but I do think he is simply going to return to the Bucs on a big contract, which he has earned by balling out last season. So I do think Baker is going to return to the Buccaneers. Giants, I personally think the bridge is burned between Daniel Jones and head coach Brian Dable. Does that mean he will never play another game for the Giants? I'm not sure. I think it's going to be really hard to trade him after you signed him to a massive extension. But I think for the long-term benefit of the Giants, they probably want to get somebody in there that's not named Daniel Jones. So I would say I don't know, man, because I think at their draft position, you're gonna miss out on the top 3 guys, but it's probably gonna be too high to draft. I don't know, man. Giants are in a really really tough position, man. Their roster's not good enough. They don't have a quarterback. It's tough for the Giants. Eagles obviously stand with Hurts. Cowboys obviously stand with that. Commanders, Sam Howell led the league in picks, I believe. He is not the answer. So new quarterback on the way, and I do think they're going to stick and pick in their top 3 spot and draft either Drake May or Jane Daniels. Next up, we got the Broncos, who obviously they burnt the bridge with Russ willingly. Don't know why. Sean Payton had just done a horrible job with the Broncos overall. So he burnt the bridge with Russ. They're going to move on. The question is, who do you move on to? Who's the answer if it's not Russell Wilson? I don't know. I think it would suit them well to draft a guy and have to pay him next to no money, especially when you're going to have to pay Russ so much on whatever type of buyout they work on there. But I almost feel like Sean Payton would want a veteran guy. Like I feel like Kirk Cousins, at least from the Broncos' perspective, would be like the dream get. But I'm not sure if that's really possible, especially with how much money they're going to have to pay to Russ. I just don't know. The Chiefs, obviously, no need to even talk about that. Chargers, no need to even talk about that. Raiders, yes. Jimmy G was a massive flop. Jimmy G, Jimmy G was the first quarterback to get benched last season. Then he got fucking like a 2 game suspension for PED or something. Jimmy G, man, what a fucking bum that guy is. But obviously the Raiders need something new at quarterback. I think I think drafting a guy would benefit them. However, with guys like Russell Wilson on the market, I feel like that would be better. You got Devontae Adams. Preferably, you'd bring back a guy like Josh Jacobs. I feel like the offense is ready to go as long as you get a quarterback. The defense, we saw how well they played once Antonio Pierce took over at head coach. I feel like they're kind of on their way. If they draft Russ and draft like a Kool-Aid McKinstry or a Terrion Arnold with their first pick, we could be talking about the Raiders as like a 10-win team next season. So they have a lot of options, similarly to the Falcons, I feel like. But we'll see what they end up doing. Steelers, this one's tough because I don't think Kenny Pickett's good enough. While it is true that Matt Canada was awful, Kenny Pickett's had like 20 plus games to figure it out, right? And it's not good. It does not look good for Kenny Pickett that a guy like Mason Rudolph was able to come in at the end of last season and look extremely good, right? So I just think it's a bad reflection on Kenny Pickett. I think he is a bust. And the Steelers, I think it would benefit them to move on, go after a guy like Russell Wilson and Kirk Cousins, even a guy like Justin Fields, actually. Ravens up next, obviously. No need to move on. Browns, you can't move on. Deshaun Watson's making too much money. Bengals, obviously, no need to move on. Titans, Will Levis look good. I think you stick with him for the time being. Colts, AR, don't know what he's going to do or how he's going to be yet, but obviously you have to stick with him. Texans, obviously, CJ Stroud. Jaguars, even though Trevor Lawrence looks shaky, it still does not make sense to move on from him. Patriots, obviously, massive opening. Mac Jones, I don't think will ever play another game in New England. Um, I don't know if he gets traded or not. I actually think Mac Jones is kind of a slept on option for a lot of these teams at quarterback. Like, I feel like Mac Jones, if he went to the Raiders or the Falcons, would actually take them to the playoffs because he took a not good Patriots offense to the playoffs in his rookie year. So I think people are sleeping on Mac Jones because of how bad the Patriots were as a team last year. But yeah, obviously, I think Patriots are going to move on, similar to the Commanders, stick and pick at their top 3 position. Dolphins obviously staying. Jets, it might benefit the Jets to draft a guy like Spencer Rattler or, you know, something like that, because obviously I think A Rod has 1 more year at most. So it might benefit the Jets to go after a guy in like the 3rd or 4th round. But as far as like making a change on the starter, absolutely not. And the Bills also absolutely not. So we went over every team now. So now let's look into the guys who I think, the vets, and what I think is going to happen with them. Starting off with Russ, it's not final yet that the Broncos are going to like buy him out or trade him, whatever. But I'm almost positive they're going to release him and figure out the contract stuff. However that all falls. In terms of where he goes, I feel like he was going to go to a team with an established coach, culture, and winning history. And when you look at the teams out there, you talk about the Falcons, the Raiders, the Steelers. Out of those 3 teams, I feel like he has a lot of respect for Mike Tomlin. And I feel like the Steelers would want a vet more so than these other guys. So, like, they're not in a position really to stick and pick and draft like another quarterback. I feel like they need a veteran guy in there. So, I think that makes the most sense, really. I could also see the Raiders, the Falcons, not as much, but I feel like the Steelers and Russ is the perfect fit, in my opinion. Kirk Cousins, I said it earlier, I think the Vikings, even though I think they certainly could just stick and pick a Bo Nix or Penix and it would work for them, I think Kirk Cousins with the Vikings has been a top 10 quarterback and really underrated during his time there. It's almost like he's been getting better as time goes on. And last season, before he got hurt, he was an MVP candidate, even though people don't really talk about that for some reason. He was putting together a monster season. So I think Kirk is going to return to Minnesota. The only question is how much. And quite frankly, Kirk's not going to he's not going to break the QB market with the contract or anything like that. He's a little older, coming off a major injury. I think a 4 or even a 5-year deal like 200 million, I don't think that's unreasonable, especially considering, that last year, maybe the last 2 years, if it was a 5-year deal, are probably going to be like voidable anyways. So I feel like Kirk in Minnesota could come together work together on a team-friendly contract that also pays Kirk excess of 40 million a year, I think that's deserved. And I do feel like they're going to come to terms on a deal like that. Next up, Baker, similar situation. He's going to get paid, I think, because he deserves it. Buccaneers, he took them to the playoffs, man. Nobody thought that the Buccaneers were going to win the NFC South. Like honestly, I feel like people even were more confident in the Panthers for some reason. I never got the Panthers hype. I feel like the Bucks were just getting no attention because people did not believe in Baker at all. And he put together a career year, and I'm not proud. I'm happy for him, because it seems like him and Mike Evans had a real connection. They obviously got to bring back Mike as well. And I don't know, it just seems like his type of place to be, in the South, Florida. He seems like a typical Florida man. And I do think he has earned himself a career payday, and I hope he does return to the Bucks on a lengthy deal. Next up, we got Gardner Minshew. This is interesting, because nobody's really talking about Minshew this offseason, like how his performance with the Colts kind of shapes up into his future. But the fact of the matter is, he played pretty good. I think the hype with Minshew as like an actual like option for a team is kind of dead. Like he's never taken a team to the playoffs as a starter, and he was close with the Colts. Obviously, if that who was like a running back, like a third string running back, dropped that pass, it was like the final season or final game of the season or something like that. But you know, he's just not good enough. He's just it's weird though. He's a great backup. We saw it. The Colts were a player or two away from the playoffs with Gardner Minshew basically the whole year. So I think a team like the Jets, which should be very concerned with Aaron Rodgers' injury history, would certainly uh look into a guy like Minshew. But the question is, does Minshew really want to go into a situation knowing if things go right, he'll be the backup? Because I feel like a team he could start and probably take a team like the Falcons to the playoffs, a team like the Raiders to the playoffs. But I think those teams are looking at better options. So I don't know. I really don't see a world where Gardner Minshew signs with a team and they intend for him to be the starter. But I do see a world where he waits it out maybe. Guy gets hurt and he is a starter next season because he wasn't bad with the Colts. He had some bad moments. He's not good enough to be a starting quarterback normally, but I do think he will somehow find a way to be a starter next season. But I do think the Jets would be a really good fit for him. Next up, we got the Falcons. I made this video like 4 or 5 days ago, but like since that, like more hype has kind of surrounded Justin Fields to the Falcons. I talked with my friend about this the other day, who is a Falcons fan. It just makes the most sense, right? Because if you're the Falcons, do you want to spend a top 10 pick on a guy like Penix or Bo Nix, or do you want to get a guy like Justin Fields, who's already proven in the league that he can win games with a team like the Bears, a dysfunctional team like the Bears? Not saying the Falcons aren't dysfunctional, but that's a playoff team if they got a quarterback who does not lead the league in turnovers, right? Because that's what Desmond Ridder did. So if you have something better than that, the Falcons are a playoff team, obviously a really, really bad division. I think Fields takes this team to 9 to 10 wins in the playoffs instantly. He's from Georgia, I believe. You see the talent on the Falcons offense already. You get to keep your top 10 pick and probably draft a guy like Dallas Turner to be your new perennial edge rusher. It's just, I feel like the Falcons have so many options. Like you could literally get Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, trade for Justin Fields, stick and pick Michael Penix, Bo Nix. And I feel like all of those options are good options. It's simply what do the Falcons think is the best option. And the only downside I feel like to Justin Fields would be that you might have to pay him right away. I do think if Justin Fields were to land in Atlanta, he may be willing to play that whole first year and then kind of discuss a contract extension because if he comes in, plays like how he's shown us he's capable of playing so far, and takes them to the playoffs, I don't think the Falcons would have any problem giving this guy 40 mil a year. And you may think about that now and say, what the hell, Justin Fields 40 mil a year? But he was good last year. If he stays healthy the whole year, he possibly takes the Bears to the playoffs. And if he takes the Falcons to the playoffs next year, it's kind of proof of concept, if you will, of him being a good quarterback. So I don't think 40 mil is unreasonable at all for Fields next year if he takes the Falcons to the playoffs. So yeah, I'm kind of talking myself into that move actually a little bit more. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I want to see it. I'm not a Falcons fan or anything, but I have to watch them because for some reason that shit's always on my TV here, being in Georgia. So I would much rather watch Justin Fields play than fucking Desmond Ridder. Next up, let's talk about the rookies here. Obviously, I think the top three is kind of settled here. Caleb has been getting more and more momentum to Chicago, which I'll say this. I don't think that's bad. People are talking about Caleb protesting and not wanting to go to the Bears. The Bears are not the same situation they were like 2 years ago, for example, right? They got DJ Moore, you know, they got Darnell Wright. Their offensive line is kind of a little more figured out. They still need another number or another, big receiver. That's a guarantee, but they have I don't know. They can figure that shit out some other way. Defensively, they made the trade for Montez Sweat. Got to re-sign guys like Jalen Johnson. But the Bears are not as bad as they were like last year, for example, or the start of this year, even. So, yeah, I think the Bears and Caleb is actually a pretty solid fit there. Even though if I'm the Bears, like I said, I still would rather keep Justin Fields. Drake May of the Commanders, Jayden Daniels of the Patriots. I think those are both basically set in stone. The Patriots, who I have a little bit of concern with, do they think does a new coach come in and think that Mac Jones is the answer? If they get a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., for example, who knows? But I do think Jayden Daniels, Drake May, and Caleb will be the top three picks to the Bears, Commanders, and Patriots, respectively. Next up, we got the Raiders sticking and picking Michael Penix. Look, I think they got a lot of veterans on that team, like Devontae Adams, Max Crosby, that are making a lot of money. I think I think drafting a guy like Penix, who has a lot of experience and is very accurate, makes a lot of NFL caliber throws very well. Drafting him, paying him not a lot of money for the next 5 years, it's very easy to build a team around a guy like that, especially when you already got a team that's damn near talented enough to make the playoffs. So I think Penix comes in right away and honestly leads the Raiders to 9+ wins. And I think the same, well, not the same thing with Bo Nix, but the same philosophy, I guess, where you draft a guy, pay him cheap money, and build a team around him. Because I think Bo Nix is actually a really good. Like I think both these guys should go in the top 20 and should start right away. And I think they both will look good right away. Maybe Penix more so than Nix if he went to the Raiders, because I think the Broncos is actually not a very good situation right now. You don't really have a number one receiver. The Jerry Judy situation is weird. And Javonte Williams, I think, got back healthy. He looked good by the end of last season, but the Broncos' offense is kind of a mess. Their defense, it's not a good situation in Denver. But if they can't get a Kirk Cousins in free agency, then you're probably going to have to look towards the draft. So, um, that's who I think. That's where I think these five guys, because I do think it's going to be five quarterbacks in the first round. I think it's going to be these five guys, and that's where I think they will end up. Moving on. These are the leftovers. All the guys who are, if they're lucky, let me say that, if they're lucky, will be backups next season. Starting from the top left, we got Drew Lock from my Seahawks. Played really well. I mean, he came in that game against the Eagles, won the game against the Giants where he had to come in. So, Drew Lock's not a bad guy. The only question is, did we see the development from Denver to Seattle? I'm not sure. Not a big enough sample size to see. I don't think anybody's going to give him a chance to be a star next year. So he's probably going to have to settle for, I think a return to Seattle would benefit him, especially if Seattle doesn't draft a quarterback. But yeah, Drew Lock, he's not really a starter anymore. Jimmy G, honestly, I think he's done. I think the Raiders are going to find a way to release him. And I don't think any other team picks him up, honestly, man. It's just like everybody kind of knew by the time his 49ers tenure wrapped up that he was not that guy. And him being garbage on the Raiders this year only proved that, He had a coach that specifically wanted him and wanted him to be successful in Josh McDaniels, and he still failed miserably. So I think Jimmy G, if he wants to keep playing football, was on to the UFL or whatever that is. Jake Browning right there for the Bengals. He looked good in stretches, He put up a lot of yards in a couple games, but obviously could not get the Bengals to the playoffs. All these situations are going to be, I don't really think these guys are going to, especially when you're competing with a guy like Gardner Minshew, for example. Like, are any of these guys really, did they impress more than a Gardner Minshew who had like a much larger body of work? I don't think so. I think Browning, it would suit him to just return to the Bengals or something like that, since he already has that chemistry and that rapport with that organization. Kenny Pickett, this is the guy who has the most likelihood of just being a starter next year if the Steelers elect to just not, get anybody else. But I think the writing's on the wall I don't think the city believes him anymore. Most of the players don't. I'm not sure Mike Tomlin looks at Kenny Pickett and it's like, oh yeah, that guy's going to take us to the playoffs. So, or the Super Bowl, I should say. So I think his time is done in Pittsburgh, even if he does stay on the roster. I think they should look to another option. Same thing with Desmond Ritter. Very, very similar situations, actually. Same draft class, I believe. So yeah, they didn't get it done, and they both had a large enough sample size. Desmond Ritter got like a season and a half. Same with Kenny Pickett due to injuries. Like it's not like these guys played like 6 or 8 games, right? They had over like 16, 18 games, and they didn't show enough. Trey Lance, you know, he's a guy who just hasn't really got any opportunity. But I don't think that's going to continue to be the case. If he stays with the Cowboys, then he's a backup for now. Good thing going for Trey Lance is that he's very young, right? Compared to like a Kenny Pickett or Desmond Ritter, for example. So he still has time to actually improve. Tyrod Taylor there for the Giants. Didn't he come in and like win 2 games or something when the Giants just like could not win a game or something? It was something like that. But yeah, Tyrod. I don't know why I put him on here even. Tyrod's done. I would like to see Tyrod in the UFL just because I want to see more guys transition to that. But yeah, I don't think Tyrod's playing in the NFL no more. Sam Howell, similar situation to Pickett and Ritter. Did not show enough positive things. Hopefully, if he's lucky, he'll stay and be a backup. But yeah, not a starter anymore in DC. Jacoby Brissett. I think Jacoby could still be a backup somewhere. I think a team like the Jets, if they don't go after a Minshew or draft a guy, I think Jacoby Brissett could be a really good option for them. So keep an eye on Jacoby. Daniel Jones, this guy, he actually probably has the highest chances of being the starter next year. Um, didn't he suffer like a really bad injury that like will he be ready for the start next season? I should have looked into that before this video, but yeah, I think he's going to be on the Giants next season. Yeah, he's probably just gonna be a starter next year. Too much money. Gonna be tough to get out from that. That's Joe Flacco. It's so weird with Flacco. It's like, do you just keep him on the Browns? Because if you're the Browns, you gotta think at this point, like Deshaun is so injury prone. He's not good enough. It might just be in their best interest to hold on to Flacco and just assume that he's gonna play at least like 4 games next season or something like that. So I think Flacco actually has a pretty good gig in Cleveland right now. He should just stay there. JJ McCarthy is another guy. Now he's obviously a big or a very different situation. He's not even in the league yet, but I there is a 0% chance, in my opinion, that he starts for a team next year. Like I just don't even see that as a possibility. He's too young, too raw of a prospect. I honestly think he should have went back to college for another year. Um, I don't see the NFL level traits right now. I think wherever he goes in the second round, they're going to have to take some time to really develop him. And yeah, that's why I see from JJ McCarthy right now. Mac Jones, talking about him already. I would prefer to see him go somewhere else and kind of fight for a job because, like I said, I think he's good enough to take some of these good rosters to the playoffs. But the question is, do the teams around the league have they given up on Mac Jones? I'm not sure about that yet. We will, time will only tell. Tannehill kind of sucks. I'm being honest. It kind of all went downhill for Tannehill after that playoff game against the Bengals, where he threw like 3 or 4 picks, and their defense got like 9 sacks, but it wasn't enough because Tannehill just could not hold on to the football. So yeah, ever since then, his career at Tennessee has just been fucking deep decline. But yeah, I don't think he plays for the Titans anymore. Question is, does any other team give him a shot? I doubt it. Maybe as a backup, but no way in hell as a starter. Jameis, I think he's just having fun in New Orleans, to be honest. They probably hold on to him. Yeah, seems like a good fit actually for Jameis in New Orleans. And then Zach Wilson. I saw the story. The Jets were like they gave him permission to seek a trade. Please, somebody tell me who the hell wants to trade for Zach fucking Wilson? Fucking the San Antonio Brahmas. The the Orlando Guardians would gladly give up some, $20 to get Zach Wilson. In all seriousness though, Zach Wilson's not good enough to be an NFL quarterback. From what I've seen, maybe he can turn it around, improve his game a little bit, but as it stands, Zach Wilson does not belong in the NFL. So, on that somber note, that's going to be it for this video, man. I have no idea how long that was. I was hoping this would be like a short, like 10, 15-minute video. This is probably like 30 minutes. I apologize, man. The yapping never stops on this channel. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Comment if you think I got any of these predictions wrong. Where do you think a guy like Russ or Caleb Williams is going to end up? And I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
It's out the motherfucking pack. Right out. But niggas don't know how to act.